before I get into this, if you've ever had someone decide who you are before you said a word, you're going to feel this one. For 6 months, my husband's own son treated me like hired help in my own house. What finally changed his mind wasn't an argument or a big speech. It was one Tuesday in October none of us saw coming. Stick around because the ending genuinely surprised even me, and I lived it. The first time Daniel walked into our home, he didn't say hello. He looked me up and down, set his briefcase on the kitchen counter like he owned it, and said, "So you're the one who married my father for his money." I was holding a wooden spoon. I set it down slowly. "I'm Grace. It's nice to finally meet you." He didn't shake my hand. "I've read about women like you. Older man, recent widower, lonely, vulnerable. You people have a type you go after." Behind him, his wife Priya mouthed "I'm sorry" over his shoulder, before he turned and caught her doing it. She dropped her eyes to the floor. My husband, Walter, was in his study on a call with his lawyer about the foundation he ran. He had no idea his son had just walked into our kitchen swinging. "Since you're clearly going to be living here rent-free," Daniel said, opening the refrigerator like he was inspecting it, "you can start earning your place. Dad's diet is strict. No sodium, no sugar, 3 meals a day, on time. Priya and I will be staying in the East Wing until our house closes. You'll keep it clean. No housekeeper poking around while we're here. I don't trust strangers in my father's home." I looked at him for a moment, then I picked the spoon back up. "Dinner's at 7. I hope you like roasted salmon." He blinked like he'd expected a fight and didn't know what to do without one. "That's it? No argument? Should there be one?" Most people in your position would at least act offended. I'm not most people, and for what it's worth, you're not the first person who's decided they know exactly who I am in under 30 seconds. You won't be the last either. I kept my voice even. "Doesn't change what's for dinner." He walked off toward the East Wing without answering. Priya lingered a second longer, glancing over her shoulder like she was checking he was actually gone. "He's not usually like this," she whispered. "He's just scared," I finished for her. "I know." She looked surprised that I'd said it so plainly, then nodded and followed her husband down the hall. I stood there a second longer than I needed to. Not gonna lie, it stung. But I'd learned a long time ago that reacting to a scared person's worst moment never fixes anything. It just gives them a reason to feel justified. So I went back to the salmon. I hadn't married Walter for his money. I'd married him because he was the only man who ever asked me what I thought about a book before he told me what he thought about it. I met him at the Millbrook Public Library, where I'd worked the reference desk for 11 years. He came in every Thursday, always requesting the same author, Wallace Stegner, and always returning the books early because, he said, a man who can't finish a novel in a week has too much time on his hands. We talked for months before either of us called it anything. He told me about his late wife, Anne, who died of ovarian cancer 9 years earlier, and about the son he'd raised mostly by handing him to nannies and tutors, while he built a logistics company that shipped freight across 4 continents. "I gave Daniel everything except me," he admitted one evening over coffee that had long gone cold. By the time I looked up, he was 31 and didn't call unless he needed something signed. "Do you think he resents you?" "I think he resents that I found peace after his mother died, and he never did." When Walter proposed, 18 months into knowing each other, I told him I needed to think about it, not because I doubted him for a second, but because I met Daniel exactly twice by then, and both times he'd looked at me like I was a line item on his father's estate. I knew exactly what I'd be signing up for. I said yes anyway. Some people get a fairy tale. I got a very nice man and a very complicated kid who hadn't finished grieving his mother. And honestly, I'd take that trade again, no cap. Walter cried a little when I said yes, and pretended he hadn't. "I promise you," he said, "he'll come around." I told him I didn't need Daniel to come around. I just needed Walter to stop apologizing for a son he loved. He didn't get what I meant then. He would eventually. The first 2 weeks with Daniel and Priya under our roof were an exercise in quiet endurance. Daniel left notes on the counter. "Dad doesn't like the eggs runny. Ask before you rearrange anything in the study." We are not calling you Mom. I never once raised my voice. I made Walter's meals exactly as his cardiologist ordered, kept the house immaculate, and left Daniel's notes unanswered except with results. When he complained the sheets weren't changed often enough, I changed them the same day without comment. When he implied I was getting comfortable spending Dad's money after I bought new curtains, I quietly returned them and paid for the replacement myself, then said nothing about it. Let him wonder. What he didn't know was that I'd spent 11 years running a public institution on a shoestring budget, dealing with difficult patrons and board members who assumed a woman behind a reference desk had nothing better to do than be pushed around. Daniel wasn't the first person to underestimate my patience. He wouldn't be the last. Priya, though. Priya started leaving the East Wing more often. She'd find me in the garden and just sit, saying little at first. Then one afternoon, watering the tomatoes, she said, "He wasn't always like this. Before his mom died, he used to write her letters. Actual letters, even though she lived in the same house. He still has them. I found the box once. He doesn't know I saw." Grief does weird things to people, I said. Sometimes it makes them soft. Sometimes it makes them pick fights with anyone standing near the person they're scared of losing next. She looked at me for a long moment. "You're not what he thinks you are." I know. He'll figure that out eventually, or he won't. Either way, I'm not going anywhere. By week 3, Daniel had run out of new rules to test me with, so he switched to testing my patience instead. Forgetting his key and ringing the doorbell at 11 at night, asking twice in front of dinner guests whether I'd signed a prenup, like it was casual small talk, real classy stuff. The worst one happened on a Sunday. Walter had 2 old friends over for lunch, and Daniel spent the whole meal dropping little comments. "Grace here used to work behind a desk, believe it or not. Funny how fast you get comfortable in a house this size," dressed up as jokes so nobody could call them what they were. Walter was mid-story about a bridge project in Savannah and missed every single dig. I caught all of them. I smiled and refilled everyone's iced tea. After the guests left, Priya found me in the kitchen scrubbing a pan that didn't need scrubbing anymore. "You know he was being petty on purpose, right?" "I know." "Doesn't it get to you?" It did for about the first 10 minutes. I set the pan down. Then I remembered he's not actually mad at me. I'm just the closest target he's got. I figured that was just how it was going to be. Months of polite Cold War, forever. I was wrong. Everything changed on a Tuesday in October, and honestly, if you'd told me that morning how the day would end, I wouldn't have believed you either. Walter was in the garage of all places, trying to help Daniel replace a car battery neither of them actually knew how to install. When he went quiet mid-sentence and sat down hard on the concrete step, I was inside starting dinner when I heard Daniel shout my name for the first time. Not Grace, not you, just a raw, panicked Grace. By the time I reached the garage, Walter's lips had a gray tinge and he was pressing a fist to his sternum. I recognized it instantly. Walter had a mild cardiac scare 2 years before I met him, and I'd read every page of his file the week we got engaged, because I refused to walk into a marriage unprepared for the person I love. "Aspirin," I said to Daniel. "Bathroom cabinet, second shelf, chewable, not the coated ones, now." He didn't move. "Daniel. Now." That broke him loose. He ran. I got Walter sitting upright against the car, loosened his collar, kept talking to him in a steady voice, while Priya called 911. By the time the paramedics arrived, Walter was pale but conscious, and I had his medication list and insurance card already in my hand, because I keep them by the door. I'd made sure of that the week we married, after hearing about his first scare. At the hospital, Daniel sat in the waiting room with his head in his hands, still in the grease-stained shirt from the garage. Priya was pacing by the vending machines. I brought him a coffee he didn't ask for. He stared at it for a long time before he spoke. "You knew exactly what to do back there. Like, instantly. No hesitation, nothing." He shook his head. I froze, my own dad, and I straight up froze. I read his file the week we got engaged. I asked his cardiologist questions most people wouldn't think to ask. I paid attention. I sat down beside him. "That's what love looks like once the fireworks settle down, Daniel. It's not romantic. It's knowing where the aspirin is." He didn't answer right away. His hands were still shaking. I've spent months treating you like you were after his money, he finally said, voice low. And today you were the only one who didn't fall apart. Not gonna lie, that's messing with my head. I panicked, I admitted. I just didn't have the luxury of showing it. He looked at me then, really looked, maybe for the first time since the briefcase and the accusation. Why didn't you ever push back? I gave you every reason to hate me. Because I understood what you were actually scared of. You weren't worried I'd take his money. You were worried I'd take the only parent you had left. The same way you felt like you lost him to work when you were 15. I paused. I was never trying to replace anyone, Daniel. I was just trying to stay. His shoulders dropped, like he'd been holding them near his ears for 6 months, and forgot how tired that made him. He wiped his face fast, like he could pretend he hadn't. For real though, he said, voice cracking. Thank you. I mean it. That was the first time he'd ever thanked me for anything. Walter recovered. A stent, a new medication regimen, and strict orders to let other people carry the groceries. He complained about all three constantly. 3 days after he came home, I walked into the kitchen to find Daniel standing over the stove in one of my aprons, staring at a recipe card like it was written in another language. I'm making his low-sodium chicken thing, he said without turning around. I looked up the recipe. I think I'm doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong, I agreed, and showed him how to do it right. We cooked side by side in near silence for 20 minutes before he finally said, not looking at me, I owe you an apology. A real one. Not the kind where I explain myself out of it. I'd like that. I'm sorry for the notes. For the whole gold digger thing on day one, which, in hindsight, was pretty extra of me, for making you cook and clean like staff when you married the guy for love and I refused to see it. He set down the spatula. You never once made me feel small for it. I genuinely don't get how you pulled that off. Practice, I said, and because underneath the attitude, I wasn't looking at a grown man threatening me. I was looking at a 15-year-old who missed his dad and never got the chance to say so. Daniel's eyes filled before he could stop them. He didn't try to hide it, which told me more than the apology did. Real talk, he said, laughing a little through it. I came in here ready to hate you on principle. Didn't give you a fair shot. I noticed. You could have made this so much harder than it needed to be. I could have, I agreed. Didn't seem worth it. That evening, Walter sat at the head of the table for the first time since the hospital, watching his son plate a slightly overcooked but entirely edible dinner for all 4 of us. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. Every so often, his eyes would land on Daniel and just stay there a beat longer than normal, like he was trying to memorize the sight of his son cooking dinner in his kitchen without being asked. Priya and Daniel moved into their new house that winter, but Sunday dinners never stopped. Sometimes Daniel cooks. Sometimes I do. He still leaves notes on the counter occasionally, except now they read things like, bought your favorite tea, hope that's still okay to say, or dad's trying to sneak bacon again, heads up. Priya told me later that Daniel kept a printed copy of his dad's cardiologist's schedule in his wallet, next to his ID. He'd be embarrassed if he knew I told you that, she said. The first time he called me by name instead of you or nothing at all, I didn't make a big deal out of it. I just answered like it was normal, because I wanted it to become normal. And it did. People ask if I ever got Daniel back for those 6 months. Honestly, no, not even a little, and he definitely gave me plenty of ammo. But I never wanted to win against him. I wanted him to stop feeling like there was a war going on in the first place. Punishing someone for being scared just teaches them to hide it better. Staying when you have every reason not to teaches them something else entirely. So, back to what I said at the beginning. The ending that surprised even me. It wasn't the apology, it wasn't even the hospital. It was 6 months to the day after he first called me a gold digger in my own kitchen, when Daniel showed up on our porch with a grocery bag and said, I'm making dinner tonight. Dad's orders. You're not allowed to help. Then he blocked the kitchen door with his arm, laughing, and said, No cap, Grace, sit down, let somebody take care of you for once. That's the whole story. No dramatic blow-up, no big reveal, just a family that finally stopped being afraid of each other. If you've ever been the outsider walking into a family that already decided who you were before you opened your mouth, I hope this gave you something. See you in the next one.